So we've got a pretty incredible chapter here because we're cutting away from a Kotsu cutting Kenjaku's freaking head off at the end of the previous chapter. And we're coming back to Yuji and Higuruma going against Sukuna. And this is a Sukuna who just freshly killed Kashimo and Gojo. But before we see what happens between them, we're actually going into a flashback from a month prior. This was the month that they had to prepare for the final fight, I guess you could say, against Kenjaku and Sukuna. And we see all the sorcerers here having this big meeting going over their plans. Gojo's not there, along with a select few others. But the first thing that they discuss is that they're going to have Takaba go against Kenjaku, use his curse technique to create an opening where a Kotsu can come in and cut Kenjaku's head off. But then they also want a Kotsu to come back immediately after he does that. However, they only want that to happen if Gojo loses. And they glance over this very quickly, which is super interesting because that is such a huge thing to just glance over, considering how much they go into legal jib-jab in this chapter, which I'll get into, don't worry. But it makes me think that, like, why are they so nonchalant about Gojo dying here? And I don't want to spend too much time on this because I've already talked about it before, but it just makes me think that there might be a chance Gojo is coming back, or they had a contingency for Gojo dying. And just like in my previous videos, I'll link my Gojo coming back compilation theory video at the end of this one, in case anybody's curious. But I wonder if we're going to come back to this, because Gojo did stuff during this time too that we don't know anything about, right? So we need to see that. And also, as for it saying a Kotsu to come back immediately after he kills Kenjaku, when he kills Kenjaku, that's technically happening as the end of this chapter is progressing with the trial and everything. So I suppose it's all going to coincide with each other, or at least their stories will converge at some point. But they're also discussing how they're going to quote-unquote group fight Sukuna here. And that they can't just have everybody jump in because Sukuna would just massacre nearly all of them immediately. And on paper, yes, if you just went in there aimlessly, Sukuna would, atomic cleave or dismantle them, just like he did to Kashimo. But if you come in there with a plan, I'm pretty sure everybody here could, in theory, take down Sukuna if they all work together. Because we have a bunch of pretty powerful characters here with great curse techniques or just tangential abilities that could be effective in taking him down. Right? I mean, it's not even like they're even trying to entertain that here. They more so just want to go with Yuji and Higuruma going against Sukuna, which is the plan that they ultimately decide to go with. But before that, they also mentioned Miwa here, about how Miwa is like one of the people who would be immediately killed by Sukuna, which is obviously true. But Kusakabe also points out that Miwa is unable to use swords because of the binding vow that she made at the end of the Shibuya arc, which was all for naught because Kenjaku just clowned her. And considering that Gege is bringing her up here, and also we saw that random panel of her like walking in the culling game, like, I don't know, last year or something like that. I assume Gege has some kind of plan for her where she's gonna do something epic, right? But then again, she is a woman, so she'll probably just get killed. But anyway, Higuruma says that he could use his curse technique / domain expansion, deadly sentencing, against Sukuna to at least confiscate his curse technique, which is a step in the right direction, I guess. I mean, taking away Sukuna's curse technique isn't like completely crippling him the way that it would another sorcerer. He's still an absolute beast with double the cursed energy of a Kotsu and some of the greatest cursed tools ever made. And he knows like a whole bunch of other stuff where he doesn't even need to use his curse technique. But obviously there is more to deadly sentencing than just confiscating the curse technique, because also if Judge Man, the Shikigami associated with deadly sentencing, declares the death penalty on you for whatever crime you did, then it will grant Higuruma the Executioner's Sword. And it's so powerful that if it cuts you just once, you will die. And the implication is that it can kill literally anyone. Even Prime Sukuna back in the Heian era at the peak of his power, if he just gets like paper cut by the Executioner's Sword, he will die. Or at least that's what I'm getting from this. So it's kind of cool that it's finally going to come to fruition here. But anyway, I'll try to summarize this sequence as best as I can, because Gege kind of goes a little too much Togashi in this chapter. Togashi, the creator of Hunter x Hunter. If you've read Hunter x Hunter, you'll know that it can get pretty tedious and taxing very quickly with the amount of exposition and dialogue that are in the chapters, especially after the Hunter exam is over. Not even talking about what's currently going on in the series. But I say that he's going full Tokashi here because he makes a feast out of something that he can just explain in like 1 or 2 pages, maybe just 1 page to be honest. And it's that they're trying to figure out how they can pin the death penalty on Sukuna. Now, naturally, you would think, well, Sukuna killed all of those people in Shibuya when he activated his domain expansion. He killed seemingly thousands of people in cold blood, right? Well, yeah, but it's not that easy because Judgman is not like a person. It's a Shikigami, more like an AI, if anything, built into Higuruma's domain expansion. So think about it the way that you would interact with ChatGPT. Like, you can talk to ChatGPT, but you can't like converse with it the way that you would a human, and you can't make it reason, right? It's not that smart. I mean, eventually it will be probably, but right now it's not. And you can only go so far with it. Judgman is kind of the same way because it only randomly chooses offenses that you have committed and what it wants to put you on trial for. And it does it sequentially. Like, it'll do it one at a time. As we saw before when Higuruma used deadly sentencing against Yuji, first it just randomly called Yuji out for illegally playing pachinko or whatever he did. Some kind of weird law that they have in Japan where you have to like go around the corner to cash in your coins or something, or I don't know, it's stupid. You know what I'm talking about. But it eventually got to the point of where it charged Yuji with murder for killing all the people in Shibuya because it couldn't distinguish between Sukuna inhabiting Yuji's body at that point, right? Goes back to it being like ChatGPT. Like, you can't explain to ChatGPT that like somebody took over somebody's body and then it killed somebody, and like, what would you do in that instance? I mean, maybe you can if you like word it enough, but I'm just trying to put it into the terms that Gege is trying to put forth here. But first, let's talk about JD World. It's probably the best anime and manga good site I've ever worked with. They have a whole bunch of anime figures, books, fashion, and merch that you pretty much can only get in Japan. I mean, just take a look at some of the things I picked up from JD World. I got this sweet Toji figure, which I've been eagerly waiting to get because you know we all love Toji. And not only that, I also got this incredible golden All Might figure. You guys know All Might is my favorite battle manga character, so you know how much this means to me. I also picked up these 2 Jump magazines that came out earlier this year, both with Luffy on the cover, of course. But even more important is that I got the Autumn Giga Jump from this year. This thing is like a phone book of content and has some exclusive posters that you'll never be able to get again unless you buy this version of the Giga Jump. Don't think I forgot about you One Punchers out there, because they also have a whole bunch of awesome One Punch Man stuff, especially this Garo figure, which I'm gonna pick up next. And that's just the beginning of the amazing things that you can get at JD World. And of course, you can go to JD World right now by checking the link in my description, but also I have 2 promo codes with them. You can use Zhoniin5 for 5% off of every order you ever make on this site, or you can use Zhoniin10 for 10% off of 1 order. And also, you'll be helping me out as well. But ultimately, you're helping yourself out by making a purchase from JD World. Let's be real. Thanks, guys. But one of the other interesting things that they bring up here is statute of limitations, which means that, like, if you commit a crime far enough into the past, then you can't be charged for it currently. So, for example, they say that in 2010, the Japanese criminal court changed to remove the statute of limitations of murder up to the murders committed before 1985. So if you were like pretty much like Hitler before 1985 and they only found out about it after the fact in 2010, then you're literally cleared of what you have done. I know it's crazy, but that's just how the law works. Even in America, they have statute of limitations. However, there is kind of like a loophole, because in the Heian era, you know, from 1,000 years ago, the golden age of Jujutsu, when Sukuna was in his prime and Kenjaku was Kenjakuing up the place, they apparently set laws of the Yoro Code, which did not have any statute of limitation. So it comes down to, like, I guess, the judgment call of Judge Man, which is already putting your faith in the hands of pseudo-sentience at this point. But them bringing it up here makes me think that there is a chance that Judge Man will bring this up, because from what I remember, it was explained that Judge Man like reads the minds or something, or just knows everything about the people within the domain, and that's how it's able to bring up the accusations. So in theory, it could dig deep enough into Sukuna's past where it's going to go into Heian era stuff, which we don't know much about, but you know, we could assume that Sukuna just went on a rampage back then, because it eventually got to the point of where most of Japan was just like, all right, Sukuna, you're the man. Just don't kill us anymore. Just, you know, do whatever you want. We'll leave you alone. Most of them. I mean, there were some people that were still trying to go after him, but you know what I'm saying. So that's the problem here. It's like they can get Sukuna on trial, but it's like, what is Judge Man going to try him for? And they only really have one shot at doing this. If Judge Man like tries him for something stupid and he only confiscates his curse technique, then it's not enough, you know, because also they bring up the fact that Sukuna currently has 2 curse techniques right now, or at least 2 base curse techniques, with his quote-unquote shrine and then Megumi's 10 shadows. So it's like, is it going to take them both, or is it only going to take one? There's just too many unknowns right now, and that's why they're brainstorming this. Also, them calling Sukuna's curse technique straight up shrine in this chapter makes me think that I guess this is confirming that Sukuna's innate ability is Shrine. It's not Cleave and Dismantle as we assumed, and that Cleave and Dismantle are additions to Shrine, meaning that Shrine is probably a curse technique that allows Sukuna to have multiple through gaining them in some way. It could be through eating people or something, not really sure, but I'm sure it parallels to Akotsu in some way. Sukuna, believe it or not, has been compared to Akotsu like 2 or 3 times in the series, and I'm really curious to see where that's going. I mean, I don't know if they're related. Maybe they are. Maybe Sukuna is related to Michizane Sugawara as well. Maybe he is Michizane Sugawara. No, that would be too much. Or maybe his brother was No, I don't know. No, I just want to see where Michizane Sugawara is. He's like the ancestor of Gojo and Akotsu that eventually became one of the big 3 vengeful curse spirits, or curses, but I think we only really heard about him in chapter 0. But anyway, that's the plan. They want to have Higuruma and Yuji take Sukuna into deadly sentencing. And that's exactly what they do here. So when we come back to the fight, Mei distracts Sukuna with one of her crows, and this allows Higuruma to come in with his giant gavel, smashing into the ground, sending rocks flying, and then Yuji comes up and like Gamu Gatlings the rocks at Sukuna, and this distracts Sukuna enough for Higuruma to wrap his gavel around the hand of Sukuna that's holding the Supreme Martial Solution, the Vajra curse tool that Sukuna has, that was apparently made by Yorozu, or the replica of it. Because I guess he would like wreck Yuji with this thing if he used it, or at least hurt him. And Yuji comes up with like a right shovel uppercut to Sukuna, but Sukuna needs to block this with like 3 hands, and it sends like a vibration through Sukuna. He's like, what was that? Now, this could be Divergent Fist, or at least the evolved version of it, but Sukuna is obviously aware of what Divergent Fist is. But however, Sukuna isn't aware of what Yuji did during that 1 month, because Yuji now has like curse arms or something. Still don't know what these are, but I assume it's indicative of his power-up that he's received. And I made a video about this like last month, I think, but it's possible that Yuji like consumed the other Curse Womb death paintings, you know, the other things that came from where Choso and the other ones came from, and he got like some kind of power up from that. It's also implied that Yuji can like switch bodies like Sukuna as well, or soul swap or something. But regardless, Yuji is super powerful right now. However, after this, Higuruma activates deadly sentencing, and now Sukuna is on trial. And this is where a nice little trick comes into play. Because like what we were talking about, they don't know what Judge Man is going to do to Sukuna. But if Yuji stands trial along with Sukuna, then Judge Man can accuse Yuji of mass murder in Shibuya on Halloween just like he did before, which is apparently the second appeal. And that's exactly what happens. But this is good, because they want this, because Higuruma can lawyer jutsu his way out of this and pit it onto Sukuna, because, you know, he's the one that actually did it. And you'd think that Judge Man should know this because he experienced it somewhat, or at least, I don't know, through Higuruma's memories he should have experienced it, but we're gonna have to go through this all again, because as Judge Man accuses Yuji of mass slaughter in Shibuya, Higuruma's like, nah, he didn't kill anyone. He did confess to it, yes, but it was a false confession due to him harboring his great sense of responsibility. And the real criminal here is, and he doesn't say it, but Sukuna. So the next chapter is probably going to include like a pretty epic lawyering up from Higuruma here against Sukuna, trying to pit the death penalty on him so that Judge Man will give him the executioner's sword. But we all know it's not going to be that easy, right? There's no way, because the series would just end. Be like, oh, give me the executioner's sword, kill Sukuna, over, right? No, there's no way. Something is going to happen. Now, first I thought, why isn't Sukuna just activating his domain expansion to either cancel out deadly sentencing or just have Cleave and Dismantle destroy it from the outside the way that he destroyed Infinite Void on Gojo? Well, I mean, it's possible that Sukuna is just too gassed to use his domain expansion again, maybe. I mean, he's still powerful enough to kill Kashimo with a freaking net full of atomic dismantles and slashes or whatever, and he can use reverse curse technique and stuff, but maybe he's gotten to the point where he can't reverse curse technique his brain and he needs like a break or something. I don't know. I mean, he was pretty gassed out at the end of the fight against Gojo, of course, but man, you just think that Sukuna would still be able to use at least one more Malevolent Shrine at this point. And also there's a possibility that Judge Man goes into like Heian era flashback stuff. Maybe this is when we see it. That would be incredible. But I don't want to get my hopes up too much for that stuff. But that's pretty much it for this one, guys. Let me know what you think about this chapter in the comments. And if you like the video, please give it a like. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.